Transfer portal got a little bit spicy on this Thursday evening. Breaking news just in the past hour or so, and it's out in Tempe, Arizona, actually, at Arizona State, where Jaden Rashada is entering the transfer portal. Now, you remember the front end of his recruitment. You remember goes to Florida, looks like he's going to Florida. That whole thing falls through, ends up at Arizona State. And so last year it was really up and down, had some injury concerns as well. So in the past hour or so, news is broken that he enters the portal. Now, I know on first glance you may look at that, and since a lot of you probably don't watch Arizona State football week to week, you probably sit there and say, oh, that's a huge deal. That's probably a death blow to them because you probably think that's their starting quarterback. And with good reason. It was last year. I'm not so sure that was going to be the case this upcoming fall. Because here's what I think most of you have been too busy to do. Most of you, because you have lives to live, have probably been too busy to track Arizona State spring football. But as you know, I have no life other than this. So I get to do that for you. How many of you know the name Sam Levitt? I didn't see many hands raised, okay? Other than Gelby, he raised his hands, but I didn't see many other hands raised. Sam Levitt, I think, was going to win this starting job, and I think it became pretty clear maybe in the last week or so of practice out there, and I think Jaden Rashada may have made what he would feel is a business decision. Now, you can, again, think about that whatever you want to. You can think that that's cowardly, or you can think it's smart. You could think it's short-sighted, or you can think it's brilliantly tactical. I don't really care because, I'm not Jaden Rashada. I'm not his father. We can all have opinions on it. But this is going to be a headline rinse and repeat every year because it's the new world of college football. I think Sam Levitt was going to win that job. I still think he's going to win the job overwhelmingly now. I think Arizona State's probably going to be in the market for third quarterback at the very least because the depth chart does take a hit there. But where's Jaden Rashada going to go? Where in the world is Jaden Rashada headed? Former elite, highly rated quarterback. And where's he going to go? I think there's going to be an assumption that Jaden Rashada goes somewhere he thinks he can immediately start. And that I'd hit the brakes on. I think maybe you could look at a little reset here, not just on the Arizona State side of things, but also with Rashada. I wouldn't assume that he's looking for a place he can go start immediately. I'd have you pay attention to what Dante Moore just did. Dante Moore just started at UCLA. What did he do? He transferred and he went up to Oregon. He ain't going to start at Oregon this year. He knows he's not going to start at Oregon this year. They'll compete, but he knows it's Dylan Gabriel's time at Oregon this year. Why do you do that? You do that because you realize you got some development that you need to go through. And so, on first glance, you may look at Jaden Rashada and say, oh, he's got to go somewhere he can start immediately. Where's the depth chart favorable? No. Maybe you look at a place where the depth chart's loaded. Maybe you look at a place where a quarterback's already entrenched. Could be a Heisman contender or something like that for all I know this year. I'm not talking about a place specifically just yet. I'm saying don't automatically assume the soft, more favorable depth chart is the place a kid like that's going to land. So Jaden Rashada's in the portal. All right, so who else is there? Dominic Williams at TCU is one of the highest-rated guys over on 247sports.com right now that we have, a 6'2", 320-pound defensive lineman. Those guys are worth their weight in Beyond Gold this time of year, as we all know. He started every game the past 2 years at TCU. He's been all Big 12 caliber player the past couple of years. Oklahoma and Texas are in here, and I want you to pay close attention to Oklahoma because Oklahoma's kind of banking very heavily on this weekend being a big weekend for them. They got the spring game this weekend, which, according to our dutiful reporter in the field, Gabe Eichert, is still on. And I know I think they've got him in there, and they got a couple other guys they're targeting. So Dominic Williams, let's pay attention to him. Keandre Lambert-Smith was Penn State's leading wide receiver last year. And because it's still pretty light in the portal when it comes to the wide receiver position, his name is at a premium. Now, his production tailed off last year, and, the ending of his Penn State tenure was what it was. But you've got Auburn, A&M, I think, have already secured visits. West Virginia's been mentioned here. Colorado's been mentioned here. I saw Georgia mentioned. I don't think Georgia's going to factor in it with him. At least that's not what I hear. So that's the latest on him. Jason Zandamela was the interior offensive lineman out there at USC. Now, this one's interesting to me. I had some people reaching out throughout spring, and it was starting to become pretty well known. He wasn't long for USC. Just some, call it complications with NIL, to be very broad, because it is what it is. But he wants to get back closer to home. Home for him would be in the state of Florida. So I think, Florida State's going to look. They cannot visit him until next week because of sanctions from whatever, the Amarius Mims recruitment a couple of years ago. But Florida State, I think, will factor there. We're at Miami today. I kick the tires around here. I think they'll factor there. I don't get the sense that this is going to be some knockdown, drag-out war. UCF probably factors in here as well. Good player. I'm not trying to downgrade him, but not necessarily sure this is the kind of recruitment that you're going to see headlines on every hour on the hour, if that makes any sense to you. What about Cormani McClain? Since we're in Miami, Cormani McClain, former 5-star defensive back from this neck of the woods, doesn't land at Miami, lands at Colorado. It's one of Deion's big gets. You remember that. And then Deion takes to criticizing his work ethic and takes to criticizing his preparation and how committed he was. And this was last year. Because a lot of those kids, when they were brought in, they were not brought in to develop. They were brought in straight out of high school to play. And some of them did, and some of them didn't. And some of them have hopped in the portal, and Cormani McClain's now one of them. Tough love. I didn't necessarily have a problem with how Deion handled that. I think we talked about it on the show at the time. But he's the number 3 available player in the portal. Now, they don't include me on portal rankings. I'm not sure I'd have Cormani McClain that high. Has nothing to do with his physical skill set. I just wonder from the neck up. Where is he? Literally, I wonder. I don't know. I haven't evaluated him myself. But, if he's prepared, if he's ready mentally, he can be a big-time player. USC's been mentioned there. I think if he tries to come closer to home, if he tries to come back to Florida, not sure Miami is involved there this time around. Just that's my feel on it. USF, though, could be a very interesting landing spot. DeMarcus Van Dyke, who, friend of the program, first off, who was at Miami at the time they were recruiting him. He's now over in Tampa with Alex Golish and company at USF. They could figure prominently, and, that would be – I know our buddy Cole Kubelik doesn't like this language. That could be a grand slam. He doesn't like us saying home run, so forget about that. We're loading the bases. That would be a grand slam for them. So let's keep an eye on that. Also, Damian Martinez is a running back that was at Oregon State. Now, we went and saw Damian Martinez in person last year on the Once Upon a Saturday tour. He's good. 2-time All Pac-12 and is in the portal now. And he's got Arizona, Mississippi State, Tennessee, Kentucky, Miami all there. I'd consider Miami my favorite. I know they had their in-home last night. He's going through the process, so that's by no means locked up, and I'm not trying to suggest it is, but that's going to be a big-time contributor and big-time add for whoever lands him. The one thing that I've had mentioned to me by coaches earlier today, namely a couple who have faced him, would be that his skill set may be better fit, or may fit better in an offense that's not tempo-based, no huddle, hurry up. It's probably a skill set that's more conducive to what you want to call a pro-style offense, if that's what you want to call it. So, transfer portal. Maybe the fireworks were just wet at the beginning, but starting to pop a little bit here. Again, it's not necessarily something we're pulling for, we're not rooting for it, but it's reality. And so in other words, we're not sounding the all clear. The other night, I wasn't going to sound the all clear because we got 12 hours into this thing without any big-time names. Now, I will tell you a couple of things that are working in your favor if you don't want this to be explosive. Number one, SEC teams cannot go after SEC players. If they do, they got to sit out a year. So you don't have SEC on SEC crime. And so I think a lot of the collectives out there also heavily invested in maintaining their priority players, which means you don't have a ton of resource left to go after big-name players, and the biggest spenders, largely in the SEC, cannot go after the talent pool that most readily would fit on their rosters. And for that reason, hey, maybe this is as loud as it gets, or maybe the next 72, 96 hours will be totally chaotic. Who knows?